Hello and welcome to another edition of the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever, I'm joined by my colleague and co-host Brian Dick, and we're going to be going over Wednesday's defeat to Cardiff, which plunged Blues a little bit closer to the Championship trap door. We'll be giving our reaction and thoughts on that and everything that unfolded during that game. Looking ahead to Coventry at the weekend, which now feels even bigger given there are only 4 games left in this season. Looking at what teams we'd pick for that game for starters, because we do want to see changes after what happened on Wednesday. And then looking at, things like recruitment, which has come up amongst supporters in the aftermath of that game. And then obviously addressing your takes and questions. And we've had a lot of them this week. We'll try and get through as many as we can. Brian, just give us your thoughts on Wednesday. I know you're quite deflated. You're deflated in the press room afterwards, and I don't think your mood's improved, has it?
No, I didn't sleep very well, I've got to say, thinking about what we were going to say on here today, replaying the game through my mind last night. It was deflating is the word. I thought in the first half was okay. I would say just about okay, a long way from good, but you could maybe see, okay, they've been told to not take too many risks, not push Laird too far forward, keep things tight, and try and play through the thirds. And albeit they were doing that too slowly, you could go, okay, they're still in this game. There's a foothold. Cardiff didn't really look to be offering too much. And then at the start of the second half, I did feel much more upbeat because Laird was pushing up. The throw-ins were being taken more quickly. There did seem to be a little bit more intensity about Blues playing. They did push Cardiff back. And I was summarising for BCWM last night, and about 3 or 4 minutes before the goal, you could see Blues committing numbers forward. And I actually said, something's going to give here. Blues are either going to overwhelm Cardiff and find a free man in the box and score a goal, or they're going to get caught. And unfortunately, it was the latter. And then, I suppose the abiding takeaway from last night was the lack of response when they went 1-0 down. That was, I don't know what the word is, worrying, terrifying. It was that as I say, that was the big takeaway, the lack of response.
Yeah, the word I use is unforgivable, because when you go 1-0 down on 65 minutes, 20-25 minutes to get back in the game. Obviously, subs are made that change things. We'll come on to that later. But when you've got that length of time to react, you expect a team in Blues position, 23rd in the Championship, in desperate need of points, to at least kind of muster up something in the final 20-25 minutes, whether they're just lumping it into the box and trying to scrap for second balls, whether they're just, getting it down the wing and throwing it in that way. You'd expect something, even if it's pot shots from distance, and you didn't really get anything. It was very, very comfortable the way Cardiff managed to see out that game, and that was the most concerning thing for me. There wasn't a lot of fight in those final 20-25 minutes, and that is something, that word keeps coming up amongst us and amongst supporters as well. And, they've got to do better. I agree with a lot of what you said, Brian. I thought Blues played okay in the first half. I thought the right patterns of play were there. They worked it through the thirds quite well without intensity. Second half, first 10-15 minutes, there was more intensity. I think probably came from the crowd as much as anything else, because the fans are obviously right up for it from after half time. And then the goal, I'm a big fan of Sung Ho Peck, and we'll talk about him again, I'm sure, later on in the podcast. But he did, make a careless error in midfield in a loose touch and gave the ball away, and all of a sudden the turnover killed Blues. So I think there's playing, and that probably was overplaying as far as Peck's concerned. Poor goal to concede. We've seen it so many times. The goals Blues concede are often shocking. And the most damning thing for me was they never looked like getting back into the game.
Yeah, and it was the belief. I don't know if I characterise it as fight. I do feel that they remained engaged and they didn't give up, but they just had no belief. Did they? They'd get themselves into decent positions in the attacking third, and the ball wouldn't go into the box. Now, and herein lies the massive issue for me. What's the point of sticking the ball into the box when there's Jay Stansfield and he's up against 2 centre backs, and you've got Bakuna who's who's the wide winger, playing sort of on as a wide midfielder, and he's not sort of coming in at the back post. You know, Blues, there's not that physical presence, is there, just to stick a ball in the box and see what happens. We've been saying this for many, many weeks now. So they're almost compelled to try and craft or invent or you know, wheedle their way through with a little bit of good interplay. And it was just that lack of belief. I mean, why would they believe that it was going to happen for them in the last 20 minutes? Because it hasn't happened to them for 10 games now. Yeah, that was the thing. It was the lack of belief in what they were doing. So something has to change now.
When you mentioned there about the lack of a physical threat, obviously that's Lukas Djukovic, isn't it? And you know, he's barely been used all season, but I think he probably would have come in very handy during this period of games under Rowett. Rowett said himself after the game, didn't it feels the moment like Blues have got to score the perfect goal because they haven't got that focal point.
Yeah, or even Hogan making a different kind of run to a near post, or you know, not running and holding his position on the penalty spot, or something like that. It's just so samey and predictable.
Just lack of a plan B, isn't there? Completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All plan A. I mean, one of the key things, and I think someone has mentioned it to take, so I'm probably jumping the gun a bit here, but there's not really been that much of a difference in style from, you know, when Mowbray was manager to when Rowett is manager. I think there's probably, or when Venus was manager, that it's the same sort of style of football, because that's probably the only way this team can play. You know, they're still playing through the third, still playing nice patterns. Miyoshi's coming inside off the right-hand side, linking with players like Peck and Jordan James. I would say I think Rowett has given them a little bit more of a defensive structure. I think that's definitely improved. I will say that. But I think as far as the football and style of play and the way Blues are trying to score a goal, I don't think there's an awful lot of difference between Rowett and Mowbray, and that is largely down to personnel that's available to him.
It's entirely down to personnel, isn't it? Surely, because you'd say as a philosophy, you know, there's quite some distance between those two managers philosophically, isn't it? But the ultimate philosophy is, you know, who are the 11 that are going to do the job? You know, you don't go, this is my dogma, and I'm going to shoehorn who you know, 11 square pegs into 11 round holes. This is I think. Yeah, with that again, we probably are trampling all over the take, aren't we? There has been no change, because this is the 11, and I think Rowett's alluded to that. I think Venus probably said it, and I think Mowbray said it even more. It's about the players having a skin in the game, isn't it? And so many of those players are out of contract. You know, so the consequences of going to League One aren't necessarily theirs, and you know, you've got loan players. With it, you know, I'll exempt Stansfield from this, because Stansfield's approach has been you can't reproach his approach, can you? Know, he's been very, very motivated and put in a shift. Yeah, you're down to. It feels like Rowett's down to the 10, 11 players that he can trust and wants to go to war with. And yet, those 10, 11 players are the belief's just not there.
Yeah. There were some subs. The subs have got a lot of have dominated the conversation amongst supporters from last night. Obviously, Rowett made 3 subs in the 70th minute, with Cody Dramé coming on for Lee Buchanan. There was an injury there, a groin injury to Buchanan. I thought he was probably one of the best Blues players on the pitch while he was on, so I was surprised to see him go off, but he has got a little groin injury. Keshi Anderson came for Koji Miyoshi. Again, Miyoshi was very effective in my eyes. And Alex Pritchard came on for Jordan James. And I actually think Jordan James probably had one of his better games in recent weeks last night. And then, 79th minute, Hogan came on for Bielik. And in the 86th minute, Gary Gardner came on for Bakuna. Brian, what was your take on the subs? I was surprised to see Miyoshi go off, I'll be honest, because I thought he was having an effect on the game.
By the end, I was struggling to see what they were trying to do. You know, by the time all 5 substitutions had been made, there didn't seem to be a shape to the side, to be honest. Yes, Gardner was probably coming on for a bit of physical presence further up the field. Pritchard seemed pretty unhappy when he was moved from the 10 slot out wide to enable Gardner to go a bit closer to the striker. Hogan, I'd have potentially brought Hogan on earlier. You know, whenever you talk about Scott Hogan, you get you risk being accused of ignoring the fact that he's been wildly consistent for 4 years. And I'm not ignoring that fact. He is not the ideal solution, but it's just something a little bit different. So I'd potentially like to see Stansfield get some support with Hogan, because he was just hopelessly outnumbered again a little bit earlier. The Anderson one, it didn't really add anything for me. Now, did Anderson come on from Miyoshi? He certainly played in Miyoshi's position briefly, didn't he? Albeit he was all over the show in terms of his positioning. Maybe Miyoshi's physical data was down. Potentially, he'd worked extremely hard. But I'd potentially like to see Tyler Roberts in that situation. Rather than Anderson. Anderson, we haven't had an assist or a goal from Anderson yet this season. So that one was puzzling.
Yeah, a penny for Tyler Roberts' thoughts. When the 5 players have come on and Blues need a goal, and he's the only, striker on the bench that's not used. It's been it's been a disappointing season for him, but he's probably not had as many chances he would have liked. Even since coming back from injury, struggled to get back into the 11 on a consistent basis, and obviously played that first Rowett game, and that's potentially been enough for Rowett, and that he's left him out for the last 3. I like you, Brian. I think Hogan's a very interesting one, because we've spoken about Djukovic not being available. He's probably not going to be available for the game against Coventry either, and maybe beyond that. So, what does Rowett do? He's only the senior striking option. It's Scott Hogan. Does he put him into the 11 and potentially move Stansfield back, or even play him next to Stansfield? Do you think that's even feasible? Do you think that can happen?
I think it's feasible. Yeah, I mean, it's he can put the guy's name on the team sheet and he can play. Yeah, absolutely feasible. Hogan leading the line with Stansfield as the 10 just behind, and then that maybe offers you the flexibility to play them both up front and defend in a 4-4-2, maybe, and attack in a 4-2-3-1 potentially. You've seen more of Tyler Roberts than I have. He played 73 minutes in Rowett's first game at QPR. Was it so bad that he's played himself completely out of the picture?
I'll be honest, first half, I actually thought he's probably Blues' brightest player in that game. I thought he played quite well. He clearly had a bit of a point to prove, getting the boos from the Loftus Road crowd. And he did okay first half, came inside a couple of times, had one effort that flashed just over the bar. I always just feel like whenever I watch Tyler Roberts, he plays at half speed. I don't know whether it's because he's had so many injuries that he's really scared to kind of stretch himself and fully commit to things. But I just feel like he plays at almost like a train pace sometimes, and I just want to see him commit and go at players, because he's got speed. We've seen that in his Leeds United days, but he never really goes past players in a blue shirt, and that's the thing for me. And also, I suppose we could look at the options Rowett's got in that position. If he's going to play Roberts as a 10 or potentially off the left, Bakuna's probably ahead of him in that role. Jordan James is ahead of him in both roles. Peck could play there as well. Obviously, Miyoshi off the right. So Miyoshi and Bakuna aren't the problem for me. I'd probably have those 2 in my 11. So if that means Tyler Roberts missing out, then so be it.
Yeah. Okay. The next question we're going to come on to is, do Blues have a better 11? Before we approach that, I think it's worth pointing out that we're probably at the stage of the season where shape and formation is probably a secondary issue to some of the traits that we've seen lacking in the last couple of games, like tempo, like intensity, like some of the basics of being physically winning physical duels in either penalty area. Those, and to an extent around the park as well. The Blues are too easy and too nice to play against.
I actually have lost some sleep over this 11, thinking about what we could actually do that's different. Because, like you say, there's not really any nasty options in there. There's not really any physicality. I would love to see an 11 at the moment, just with Mark Roberts and Lucas Djukovic at either end of it. And I know that makes me sound like a dinosaur and makes me sound old school, because Blues don't want to be kind of going back to the days where those two are influential, important players. But and they haven't been for most of this season. But I just think Blues need some leaders and character out there at the moment. That's the two of the big things that have been missing for me in the recent performances. And I would have both in my 11 if they were fit and available. Obviously, they're not. So I've tried to come up with an alternative to the 11 that Rowett has put out in the last 3 games. And, I actually quite like the 11 you're going to come on to. But, I don't think a 3-4-3 at this stage would be a bad bet, especially against a team like Coventry, who are probably going to come to St Andrews and have more of the ball, especially when the other home game is against Norwich City, another team that are going to come to St Andrews and have more of the ball. And we know 3-4-3 is a formation that does tend to work quite well away from home. So, and Blues have probably got the personnel for it. John Ruddy in goal, back 3 of Dion Sanderson, Christian Bielik and Lee Buchanan. I personally would take Emmanuel Ivo out the team at this stage. I haven't been that impressed by him throughout this season, and he always fills me with nerves rather than confidence. So, back 3 of Sanderson, Bielik and Buchanan feels quite solid, with Bielik in the middle. Drame at right wing back, Peck and Jordan James in midfield. James plays that position in that formation for Wales and does it so superbly. So I would play Laird at left wing back, but I don't know what Manny Longello's got to do to get a chance. Under the last 4 managers potentially, if you include Wayne Rooney, because he barely got a game under him. Longello's essentially been cast aside since November time, hasn't he? And he is, I'm not saying he's a brilliant left back, but he is a good left wing back at this level. He's proven that before. And my front 3 would be Miyoshi, Stansfield and Bacuna. I think you could probably throw Dembele into the mix if he's at it. But him not being involved at all against Cardiff suggests that Rowett probably doesn't see him as a fixture in his plans. But yeah, Ruddy, Sanderson, Bielik, Buchanan, Drame, Peck, James and Laird, all Longello. Miyoshi, Stansfield, Bacuna in a 3-4-3 formation. That's what I'd go with, Brian.
Yeah, I suppose what that does do is that puts Bielik in the heart of the back 3, and then you have at least some aerial presence in that back 3. He is quite a decent size and not bad in the air. And to be fair to him, reasonably committed in the air as well.
Yes,
we'll come on to this issue, but Blues have lacked that aerial presence, since Roberts has been injured and since Kevin Long's moved on. Yeah, that aerial presence is a big issue, and Bielik does address that. Peck and James. Should we have the Peck discussion now? Because Peck's not in my preferred 11. You said to me before we came on that Peck is clearly a good player, and I don't doubt that. Is he doing the job that Blues need him to do though at the moment?
I think he's doing more than most in terms of taking the ball from the defenders and dragging Blues through the thirds and playing through the thirds and trying to combine and get into attacking positions than most of the Blues players have done in the last 2 games. I think he's probably culpable for getting into positions, particularly against Leicester, and not taking on shots when he should have, because he could have probably had a goal or 2 in that first half if he had shot. I think he combines very well with Miyoshi. I think those 2 players are clearly very technically gifted and on the same wavelength a lot of the time. I think he's a really good player, and I think we'll if Blues do get relegated to League One, I don't think there'll be a shortage of takers for Sung Ho Peck. I think there'll be loads of Championship clubs coming in for him, willing to take him on loan. I think he's a very good player, very 2-footed, technically good, can play in probably 3 midfield positions. I don't think he's the problem. I actually think, we should take, probably comfort from, or we should consider Peck to be a good player based on the fact that, Tony Mowbray, Mark Venus, and now Gary Rowett, and like you said, Rowett and Mowbray, very different styles of managers, have all seen Sung Ho Peck and put him straight in their starting 11 and not taking him off at any opportunity. They've had him as pretty much an ever-present during that time. I think he's been on the bench for 1 game under Mowbray since he got into the 11 or under Venus. So I think he's a good player, and I think if Blues do want to go for more of a solid base in midfield, I think you just move Peck slightly further forward in a 4-2-3-1.
I don't doubt that he's a good player. I wouldn't dispute that for a second. I think he's Blues' best midfielder by some distance. I wonder if he's the right midfielder for this situation now. He's a South Korean international. He's been thrown into the white heat of a championship relegation battle. Is that what Blues need to get themselves out of this situation? And he's not the issue. No, there's not one player that's the issue, is there? We can go all the way back to August if we want. We can go back to the transfer window in the summer if we want to discuss the issues. What I'm talking about now is the best players for the current situation, and I just don't want to go. Oh yeah, Peck's a good player. He'll probably be fine. I just want a little bit.
I know, but
deeper thought about that.
The problem is when you're saying that about is Peck the best player for this situation. I don't think there are many players in this Blues 11 that are the best player for this situation. Do you know what I mean? I don't think there's many of them who I'd say, he's going to be good in the championship relegation scrap when the pressure's really on. There aren't many of them. That's the thing. That's why I mentioned Roberts and Djukovic, because I think they probably would be, but I don't think many in this team would be.
Yeah, I agree. Shall I offer my 11? Yep. And you can pick holes in mine. It's unashamedly Eustonian. In fact, it is virtually the side that John Eustace played in his last two games, the wins over Huddersfield and West Brom, on the basis that this team was recruited in the summer to play this way. By and large, we can get into the niceties of who was doing the recruiting for who, but the last time we saw a Birmingham City team functioning reasonably well, it was back in October. It was against Huddersfield and West Brom, and John Eustace put it together, and it was a 4-2-3-1, and it was like you, Ruddy in goal. It was a back four of Drame. The back four I'm going for, is Drame, Ivu, with Roberts in brackets, because he would certainly get in, Sanderson and Buchanan. The two would be Bielik and Sunjic. The attacking three would be Bakuna, Miyoshi and Dembele, with Stansfield up front. Now, what John Eustace had in his 11s was Kevin Long. And we'll come on to him in very, very shortly. He had an aerial presence. Now, Emmanuel Ivu is certainly not my idea of an aerially dominant centre back either. But he is the only centre back at the moment. I toyed with maybe playing Drame out of position as a right-sided centre half and playing Laird as the right back. I've tried to avoid shoehorning people into places where they're not comfortable. So for that is Ivu a better right-sided centre half or Drame? I mean,
in my eyes,
it's a close call, isn't it? But I've gone for Ivu. So it is that 4-2-3-1. It's the Eustace 4-2-3-1. It does mean a recall for Dembele. It sees Miyoshi and Bakuna, swapping 10 and right wing roles. It sees Stansfield up on his own, which isn't ideal, but it did function under Eustace. And importantly for me, it sees Bielik and Sunjic reunited in midfield. Right, the gun is yours. Shoot the holes.
I don't actually dislike it, Brian, but I didn't dislike the opening 11 games this season when Blues 6th in the Championship, to be honest. I have had big reservations about Emmanuel Ivu throughout his whole time at the club, pretty much.
Yeah, same.
I think there's only been 2 or 3 games where I've thought he's looked adequate at Championship level. And one of those he was playing at right back. So if Blues have got to play him for these final 4 games, and they've got to play him because there's no other option. But as soon as Mark Roberts as soon as his calf eases up slightly, I'd have him back in the 11, in my opinion. I like the midfield access of Bielik and Sunjic. I don't think it brings an awful lot of quality, and I get tired of writing the player rating and Sunjic won the ball back and gave it away. But I did think that was a real strong element of Blues team at the start of the season, to be honest. I like the front 4 of Bakuna, Miyoshi, Dembele, Stansfield. I thought it was excellent. If you can get a tune out of Sariki Dembele, we know he's a top-end Championship player. I think his drop-off in form since October, November time has been probably one of the main reasons why Blues have really lacked a goal threat in the last 4 or 5 months. He was on for an excellent season. It's completely tailed off, hasn't it? So it's whether, having dropped him from the squad, Rowett will come down and bring him back into the fold and put him back into the 11. I'm not sure I can see that, to be honest.
No, I don't think I can. No, I agree.
No, but yeah, I think Dembele's got a role to play, but he's got to kind of get his head around the situation and start playing like he was 4 or 5 months ago, rather than what he's done, post Rooney, which has been pretty bog standard. The thing is, Brian, I actually, we can say these 11s all we want and put them together, and I actually think they're both reasonable solutions, but I actually don't think Rowett's going to veer far away from the 11 he's played in the last 3 games. I think he's probably, got this group now, this 11 that he, like you said earlier, he probably trusts them to a certain extent and thinks they're the best 11 that he's got at his disposal to get some points on the board. And he's clearly going to have drilled them on their structure and patterns of play and training in the short time that he's been at the club. I don't think he's going to want to chop and change. He simply hasn't got time to chop and change much. He might make 1 or 2 tweaks, but I don't think there's going to be wholesale changes.
So did you not leave the press conference last night with him feeling he'd hinted at some fairly significant changes? Because I did.
See, I took it both ways, and one of our colleagues, John Curtis, said this, and I didn't get it. He kind of kept saying maybe or might. You know what I mean? He wasn't like categoric, and he kind of led us to believe before the Leicester game that he'd make changes, and then he named an unchanged 11. So I just feel like he's probably. I do think there could be a couple, 2 or 3. But I just don't think we're going to get the wholesale that we think. I mean, who do you bring in, Brian? Who do you actually see him bringing in? I know we can say Dembele or whatever, or Sunjic, but he's not used Sunjic in any of his 4 games from the start so far, has he? So, he's clearly not as high on him as we perhaps thought he might be.
Yeah, but similarly, you can't just roll out the same 4-1-4-1 or 4-3-3 or whatever it changes into in and out of possession. He's got to do something different, and Rowett must see that. I'm sure he does see that. And ultimately, it might come down to trusting some loan players or trusting some people who are going to be out of contract. Ivan Sunjic, for instance. Listen, I've been on here and said no more Ivan Sunjic for me, haven't I? Many times. But the situation has changed, and I want to see some physicality in there now.
Drama. I could have Drama as well.
Drama over Laird. Yeah.
I could have him in. Yeah.
I thought. Let's come on to Laird now, because Blues put him up last night as for the interview, and I have to say, we're probably going to be a little bit critical of what he was saying. This isn't intended to be critical of him as a person, because being put up for interview last night must have been like failing your driving test in front of 20,000 people, then being asked about it by journalists.
Sure.
That it really, if it's not such a short straw as no straw at all. That would have been a very difficult decision for the Blues media people who to put up, and they've put up a guy who's probably the most positive and most likable guy in the squad. But so some of the tone of the interview was what stood out. He was flabbergasted that Blues are in this situation. I mean, yeah, maybe he is, and obviously he sees the technical ability that's in the squad when he trains with them every day, and they're probably great ballers and they got great techers and all this sort of thing. But I'm not flabbergasted, and I don't know that you're flabbergasted.
Well, no,
because we've seen it coming for ever since Mowbray took medical leave, because they won that last game, and his last game, and we thought, right, we can got a nice downhill stroll to the end of the season. But for several weeks now, I think the time for flabbergasted was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, 4 points from possible 30. I don't think you can be flabbergasted at this point, to be honest, especially when you consider Blues have been the second worst team in the Championship since October. Yeah. Only Rotherham have been worse, and Rotherham are absolutely awful. Blues are very fortunate to probably still be in the conversation. They're probably only in the conversation because of those 2 wins before Mowbray stepped aside, and obviously the start to the season they had was quite positive under John Eustace. I'm not flabbergasted. I'm more disappointed that this season hasn't amounted to more, because the quality is quite clearly in the squad, and I will say there is quality in this squad. I agree with Laird on that. I think there's a lot of it. I think they've probably left themselves short in certain areas physically. I don't think it's not the biggest team. It's not the most dominant aerially, which is probably why Blues have struggled on defensive set piece in particular in recent weeks. I don't think the mentality has always been the strongest, particularly late in games, as we've seen. To concede 15 goals beyond the 80th minute, almost a quarter of the league goals Blues have conceded have come after the 80th minute. That is a shocking statistic. And it shows that they're not equipped to see out games. I think Laird individually, I think Laird's done okay at points this season. I think if you keep Lethan Laird fit for an entire season, we've said it before, I think there's probably a PFA Team of the Year right back there. But we've not seen that consistency from him either in recent weeks. I thought he was good against Leicester, but it was ultimately his man, Mavadini, that popped up with the winning goal there. I thought he was quite poor against QPR. I thought he did well against Preston. And again, last night, I thought he was quite poor. So even Laird, who, when he played at the start of the season, no matter when he was getting injured and when he was coming back, he'd come straight back into the 11. He'd be consistent and good. Whereas now he's just not quite at that level, and it's a confidence thing. In that interview last night, it was only 5 minutes or so that we spoke to him, but he looked completely shot of confidence. He looked, he's saying all the right things, but his body language was completely different. He looked really, really down. And it's understandable. And he's normally such an upbeat person. Whenever I've spoken to him before, even I don't think I've always spoken to him after wins. He's always been upbeat and positive, but when this situation is even getting someone like that, who's someone, a self-proclaimed optimist, down, it must be bad.
Yeah, indeed. He sparkles, doesn't he? Normally, he lights up a room, doesn't he? And last night, it was that light was dimmed very, very much. Should we come on to the Kevin Long question?
Yeah.
We've talked endlessly about the lack of aerial dominance in this side, and yes, at the time Mark Roberts was fit, I think, still, and Blues are in a reasonably okay position when they let Kevin Long go, but it's looking like an absolute howler, isn't it? It
is. I think it's probably important to provide context to it. You just said about Mark Roberts being fit at the time. Christian Bielik had effectively been converted to a centre-back, hadn't he? So
yeah, true.
Blues, in Mowbray's eyes, Blues had 4 centre-backs. They had Christian Bielik, Mark Roberts. Dion Sanderson was obviously going to be coming back from injury. And then beyond that, they had Emmanuel Ivu. And, I think the previous management in Tony Mowbray and Mark Venus have also kind of looked at Lee Buchanan as somebody who's versatile enough to play at centre-back. So they had 4 natural centre-backs, and Buchanan who could step inside. So they probably couldn't, envisage the issues that would unfold at centre-back after letting Kevin Long go, because it almost seemed pretty instant that the crisis started to unfold with Bielik getting an injury, Sanderson then getting a red card, Roberts then getting injury. So all of a sudden, for a few games, they were left with Emmanuel Ivu, who, as we've said, is not the ideal Championship centre-back, playing next to Lee Buchanan at centre-back, and that, nobody wanted to see that. So it proved to be a mistake in hindsight. I think the key thing with Long, as you've mentioned already, is that aerially he was fantastic. There was a statistic going around in the first 10, 11 games of this season that Kevin Long had won more aerial balls than any other Championship defender. I remember one game, I think it was against Millwall, where obviously, as you would expect, Millwall throw lots of balls into the box. Kevin Long won 9 headers. That's pretty much unheard of. Defenders who play for teams that, proof it back and forward, don't tend to win that many headers. So Long was doing a very good job. I think he was really helping Dion Sanderson along as well. Sanderson has not been the same player since Kevin Long was taken out of the team by Wayne Rooney. So In hindsight, I think it was a mistake. I kind of understood why they did it at the time, because it gets his wages off the books early and obviously gives him the opportunity to go and get a new club, and he probably would have wanted the move. But Blues have effectively shot themselves in the foot on that one in my eyes now.
Yeah, they were trying to generate space in the budget, weren't they?
Yeah.
Which you can understand why. And they were trying to do their best on a human level when this opportunity came along for a guy towards the end of his career. And they didn't have hindsight, but we do. And it, as you say, it's difficult to dress it up as anything other than a mistake. Do you want to do the recruitment points? Yeah, go on. What you pop these down on the plan? You've mentioned Ivu and Burke taking two loan spots.
Yeah,
and let's start with them, and we'll come on to Dizelle and Pritchard in a minute.
There's obviously, I think the inquest amongst fans is probably already beginning at this stage. I personally trace back the failure of this season to that decision in mid-October when Blues needlessly sacked John Eustace and replaced him with Wayne Rooney, a manager who had never really proven himself in the Championship and had definitely not proven himself of playing this no-fear brand of football that United wanted at the time. But some people are looking at recruitment and looking at some of the shortcomings that have happened in both transfer windows this season, and I've put down 2 points. The first of which is about Emmanuel Ivu and Oliver Burke taking up 2 loan spots. I think both of them. If I start with Emmanuel Ivu, I don't want to dig him out too much because we've already mentioned, that we haven't been impressed by him this season. But when you look at that deal, there's an option to buy for around €3 million from Cremonese. He didn't really cover himself in glory there last season. As far as I'm aware from his time in Austria previously, he was seen as an erratic defender with potential. He's 23 years old now. He should be more than potential. I don't think he's at any point really this season shown a consistent level of performance. And I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8 games in a row. I think there was a very few games before Venus left where he looked okay, but again he still made a massive mistake in that defeat to Watford. And I just think it was probably a waste of a loan spot at a time when Blues probably could have gone for someone better, a more proven Championship defender, especially when you're looking at that kind of buy option. They probably could have got better for their money. And Oliver Burke, I think he was probably a signing who underwhelmed most people on deadline day. A bit of a wild card signing. They'd already completed the bulk of their business and signed him on loan from Werder Bremen on deadline day. And we spoke about it, didn't we, Brian, at the time? And we knew he was on the Birmingham City list from the start of the summer. And you think when it's gone on for so long and they've not signed him, when they have obviously had the option to sign him previously earlier in the window, then why are you kind of, completing that deal so late? It just didn't seem quite worthwhile, and it hasn't proved to be that. His performances have been poor on the whole, and obviously he's not been available recently and was cast aside by Mowbray and Mark Venus previously before that. Those two have essentially wasted loan spots. When you look at the January window, Blues could have probably done a little bit more business in the loan market and tried to sign the striker that we've all craved. Mowbray went for midfielders in January, and after the window it did look like he'd got things right, because exactly
we hailed that as a moment of genius, didn't we? Everyone's calling for strikers and defenders. Mowbray goes out and signs 3 midfielders, wins 2 games, and we're all saying, "Oh, what a guy!" What insight that is, shows what we know. And now we're back. Now we're back to, we should have another centre back, shouldn't have let Long go, and need another striker.
Well, yeah, I think the striker one especially has become more prevalent in the last 3 weeks, because we know that Rowett would probably want to play a little bit more of a direct style of football, and he simply hasn't been able to because Jay Stansfield's the only striker, and Scott Hogan. Again, Hogan's not a physical striker, is he, really? No, so they're the only strikers available to him, so he's not been able to do it. So could those loan spots have been used better elsewhere? In my eyes, yes. I look at the Dizelle and Pritchard deals in January as well, and obviously both players that Tony Mowbray is very high on. Pritchard came and got injured straight away and has had another injury since and has barely played, only fleeting substitute appearances. I've not really been impressed by him in any of those either. Dizelle was very much signed for the Tony Mowbray and Mark Venus method of football, and they'd obviously, chased him for a long time before they eventually managed to bring him to Blues. And I was very impressed with him in those 2 games against Blackburn and Sunderland. I actually thought before that, right at the beginning of his Blues career, I thought he did well. He did what Mowbray said he would do. He took the ball from defenders and played forward incisively. However, under someone like Gary Rowett, who obviously wants a little bit more of a solid midfield, Andre Dazelle is never going to be your man, is he? So he's just fallen by the wayside under this regime, and I don't see him playing much between now and the end of the season, to be honest. And then that cast out over whether Blues will indeed sign him at all and take up the option we believe they have to bring him in permanently from QPR. But the biggest mistake on the recruitment side for me is the long one. But again, as we said earlier, it's hindsight's a wonderful thing. I actually, to defend the recruitment team, be fair to them, I think most of us said, especially after the summer window, that Blues had a good window. I genuinely think they did. I think they got most things right. I think they probably, if you look at the Burke one and swap him for a striker who's probably a little bit more proven, and you get rid of Emmanuel Ivor and have a defender who's probably played 50 games in the Championship and is a more adequate backup, I'd probably be more happier. But I think on the whole, when you've got to go out and sign 12, 13 players, I think they did okay at the time, and results at the start of the season reflected that. It's only since that decision in October when Rooney replaced Eustace that it's kind of all gone to pot.
Yeah, I think, it feels like they've chucked the physical baby out with the technical bathwater, or the other way round, doesn't it? They've gone from being a very physical, pragmatic, quite simplistic side to being one with a lot more technical players, and now we're all crying out for a little bit more physicality. Now, at the end of the recruitment window in the summer, there was still that there in the squad. They had Roberts, they had Long, they had Djukovic, and it's the loss of those 3, for various reasons, that lead to the situation that we're in now, where we're all going, there's no physicality. And I suppose if there's one takeaway from all of this, Alex, it's that you and I should never go into recruitment or football management together.
What type of player would you sign, Brian? What would you get for?
I'd sign Lucas Djukovic on a 5-year contract, even now.
He'll fire Blues back up if they do go down there. Definitely get him signed up for another year or 2. Anything else on recruitment, or do you want to move on to takes? I think the first one on recruitment.
Yeah, let's move on, I think. We're only going to embarrass ourselves the more we talk. Yeah, the first one's about recruitment. Yeah, okay, go on then.
Steve says, recruitment has to be right for next season, whichever league. I'm talking a balanced squad with the right mix of flair and physicality. There's that word again. And mostly looking at their characters and injury record. I think there's 2 or 3 good points in there. Firstly, on the physicality, as you mentioned, Brian, I don't think Blues have necessarily recruited to be in a relegation battle. I think they've got a lot of players who would probably be better suited to play a nicer brand of football at the top end of the league, which seems to be the way that most teams want to go now in terms of keeping the ball on the deck. But it's not been the way Blues have got themselves out of relegation battles previously. The injury record's a very good point, I think. We talked about characters enough. I don't think Blues have got enough strong personalities and characters in that dressing room at the moment, and it's kind of playing out on the field, especially late in games and the pressure's on. Injury record, Brian, I think that's an interesting one, because we look at last summer's recruitment. Blues are probably shopping on a slightly reduced budget in a slightly lower end market, where they were having to look at these players who were available to them because they've obviously had a checkered injury past. I'm talking about the likes of Tyler Roberts, even Ethan Laird to an extent. I actually think Ethan Laird's probably not had as many injuries as people are trying to pin on him. If you look at, he's probably played 100 games already, or getting on for 100 games, senior games at the age of 22. But even him, without those injuries, Blues wouldn't have got near him, would they?
No, absolutely, and you're right. It's a case of if you sign really good technical players with excellent fitness injury records, then you're spending top dollar, aren't you? I can't really disagree with any of that. Mick's take, players hiding from responsibility, and then he's another one pointing the finger at Dion Sanderson, captain looking disinterested and receiving a throw-in. Plus, why does it look like every time we go forward, our players always have the back to goal when receiving the ball, nobody on the front foot? I think that last bit is interesting because there's nobody making runs beyond the defence, is there? There's no one stretching the field particularly. Everything seems to be everything seemed to be in front of Cardiff last night when they were trying to break them down, and that's because they sat deep. But when Hogan came on, and I'm not presenting Hogan as the answer to everything, when Hogan came on, he did make a couple of runs beyond the back line, and that does drag defenders and it does open up pockets. And I'm just wondering if that might be another angle to go down. The Sanderson thing, I feel for Dion Sanderson. I really do. I challenge anyone to say he's not trying or he's not interested. I think the lad is absolutely hugely invested in what's happening to Birmingham City at the moment. And the criticism he's getting, I think, is over the top, personally.
I think he's probably getting it more so because he's the captain and he's the figurehead of the team, isn't he, on the pitch? And the players, at this stage, I think the players are very much getting the blame because obviously we've looked at it, they've had 4 managers this season and plus 3 managers plus 3 interims. And I think everyone's kind of reached the conclusion that they can't all be bad. It can't always be the managers. And are levelling the blame at the players. And obviously Sanderson being captain is getting the brunt of it. I don't think he's been, near to what he was before October. I think he was excellent at the start of the season. We were talking about Sanderson as a player of the season candidate.
Virtually every game he was man of the match, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. That player of the season thing is going to be fun now as well. God knows who's going to get it. Yeah.
Let's not do that now. That's a podcast.
No, we're not doing that now. So Sanderson, just to finish on Sanderson, I think he's probably the victim of circumstance more than anything else. The constant chopping and changing, I know, hasn't been easy for him, not just in personnel playing alongside him, but also in the managers and the messages that they've been receiving. I actually think Rowett has improved him slightly. I don't think he was bad against Cardiff, to be honest. I think apart from one instance where he overran the ball at the start of the second half and lost possession, Cardiff had a turnover that thankfully came to nothing. I think Sanderson did okay. I'd be more worried about Ivor next to him.
Yeah. Okay. Move on to the questions from Dave. The first one. Aside from the out of contract players, do you see Blues selling on or terminating any contracted players due to the apparent lack of character in the team? I mean, this very much depends on which league they're in, doesn't it? Those ins and outs decisions will be totally different as to whether it's a League One or a Championship season they're planning for. There
aren't going to be many players that stick around if Blues are in League One, are there? That's probably part of the problem that, like you said earlier, not enough of this squad have got something really riding on these final 4 games. But even the players that are under contract, I genuinely can't imagine many of them will be staying around if Blues get relegated to League One. You think of someone like Juninho Bacuna, I think he's actually done really well this season for a lot of it. He's got I think he's got 15 or maybe more goal contributions in all competitions. There'll be plenty of takers for someone like that, a player like that, especially someone as versatile as him. You look at Miyoshi as well. I think he's got 12 goal contributions in his first season in English football. I think he's way more than that as well in terms of the way he plays and what he offers the team. So again, he's going to have a lot of suitors. I think, as I mentioned before, Sung Ho Pek's going to have suitors as well if Blues do go down. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that because you'd like to see these players, these good players that Blues do have, and they do have some good ones, playing in a Blues team that competes at the right end of the Championship.
Yeah, indeed. Brings us on to Robbie Michaels. Can you see any leaders of men within these players? I'll take John Ruddy. You can pick through the rest of the squad.
I think Dion Sanderson's learning to be a leader. I genuinely think he's learning to be a leader. That's what I was speaking about John Eustace. To John Eustace about the start of the season when he made him captain. I think Eustace obviously recognised that John Ruddy was the natural fit. Obviously, with Lukas Jukovic not being guaranteed a starting place, but he gave it to Dion Sanderson because he saw leadership qualities within him, and obviously he's at a similar age to a lot of this group that Blues have assembled, being 23, 24. I think Sanderson will be a decent captain down the years. I just think he's probably not had the experience to deal with the chaos that's been thrown at him this season. You know, how many seasons in his career is he going to have 6 different managers and 6 different central defensive partners? You know, it's been carnage from his perspective. I hope he rides this through and comes back stronger next season.
Yeah, me too.
I think Sanderson will be here, whether Blues are in League One or the Championship. I still think he'll be here.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope so as well, because I do like him as a player. It also depends on what you mean by leadership, doesn't it? You know, it's not just a question of running around with a bloodied headband or screaming at your teammates or kicking off in a changing room. It's about having the courage to play that pass a bit quicker, or make that run. I think Bacuna can we portray Bacuna as showing some elements of leadership?
I think you definitely can, because he takes enormous responsibility during games. I think Peck does as well. I think he does. He takes responsibility in possession, more so than any other midfielder in the team. I genuinely think he does. I think Bacuna and Peck, quiet leaders, but probably leaders in that they take responsibility in possession.
Yeah, I would love Djukovic to be in that team, not from the lump it forward and scrap from the second ball's point of view, as attractive as that is at the moment, but because when I last saw him play in the flesh, it felt like when he was on the pitch there was some accountability. It just felt like that presence of a grown man who knows what the standards need to be. So interesting. You can debate leadership for ever and a day, Robbie, but thanks for the question. Thomas Spurgeon, speaking of which, when is Duke back? Is there any sense of what the plan B approach might be? We're struggling for the plan B. We've kicked around a few ideas, Thomas, in terms of different formations, so we'll brush over that one. But just a quick update on Duke, please, Alex.
I'd be surprised if he was. Well, he's not going to be. I don't think he'll be available for the Coventry game. Rowett effectively said that. He was. I mentioned to you last night before the game against Leicester. I saw him kind of doing the lightest of jogs across the King Power turf to go and take his seat. And fair play to him, he has been travelling to the away games. He was at QPR and Leicester supporting his teammates. I'd be surprised if he plays before the Huddersfield game. I've not been given any kind of definite time frame, but Rowett said it's going to be the last couple of games at best. So yeah. Hopefully he makes a miraculous recovery, because God knows Blues need him at the moment.
Yeah, they really do, and it can't end the way it did. Was it the Preston game?
Watford. When he went down.
When he went down, it can't end that way. Which brings us to Blues Breakdown. Ben from Blues Breakdown, thanks for contributing, Ben. We'll hopefully hear from you soon. Are you surprised that largely the style of football hasn't changed much under Rowett, or not, considering the squad at his disposal? He seemed to allude to this in his post-match words with the club last night. So options for Rowett and styles. What have you got to say about that?
This was kind of the take I was touching on earlier. I think Blues haven't been that different under Rowett to what they were under Mowbray. So I think we can basically say that is down to personnel. The players Blues haven't changed. Mowbray didn't use Lukas Djukovic a great deal. Gary Rowett probably would have used him a little bit more. He probably would have used Oliver Burke, who is, for all his faults, physically quite good, very fast, good in the air, strong in the air, got a good leap. I think he definitely would have used Mark Roberts at centre-back. I think it would have been Roberts and Sanderson at centre-back if Roberts is fit. So those 3 players, I'm not saying Burke would have started, or Djukovic for that matter would have started, but I think they would have been used a lot more than they were under previous regimes. But because they've not been available, Rowett hasn't been able to make any kind of change to the way Blues have played. I think he's taken the best route, in my opinion. Blues have got to play through the thirds to score goals. They've got to create. They can't lump balls up to Jay Stansfield. One of my big frustrations in the Cardiff game was John Ruddy, just smashing it forward and hoping really when it was Stansfield against two defenders. And yes, you could get a bit of luck like Blues did against Preston, where one of the centre backs has fallen over and Stansfield's run clean through on goal. But more often than not, the centre backs just head it back, don't they? Or they just nod it back to their goalkeeper, and all of a sudden they're starting an attack. So I was frustrated by that. I can understand the frustrations from the crowd. especially late on when they want Blues to get it forward more quickly. But I genuinely think that should be, faster play on the floor rather than going long and direct, because I don't think that suits this team at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. Right, I've added something. I don't know if you've noticed it. I've added something to the running order. The final point. I'll go first if you like. One reason to be positive, because we've had a right old moan for 55 minutes now, haven't we?
Sure.
One reason to be positive. I suppose I would. The hope is still there. It's not extinguished. There are the games against Huddersfield and Rotherham. Huddersfield will be as nervy as Blues are. There are winnable, inverted commas, games left for Blues. Hopefully Norwich will either be in and not that competitive on the final day. So it is still there for the taking. They've not been cut adrift or. The question is, can we see this side take it? Sorry, I'm going to be positive. It is still possible. It's still there for the taking, and I still can see fixtures where you go, okay, that's not Leicester away. That's not beyond the realm of possibility.
I think we're probably singing from the same hymn sheet, Brian, here. Mine would be the fixture list. I think Coventry, a week before they play an FA Cup semi-final, I think you've got to hope that their players have got one eye on that. They have tailed off a little bit in the race for the playoffs the last couple of weeks. They lost a game at Southampton, didn't they? So they're now, it's not in their own hands. They're looking unlikely to catch Norwich now. And when you think of that Norwich game as well, could it be wrapped up for them on the final day of the season? That would probably give Blues a decent helping hand, especially if David Wagner does rest players going into the playoffs, which managers at that time of the season tend to do. And those two away games, Blues simply have to beat Rotherham. There is no excuse. Blues don't deserve to stay in the Championship if they don't beat Rotherham. Rotherham are the worst team in the league. Blues played them early in the season, and some almost managed to conspire to gift Rotherham 3 points on that day. And you think of Huddersfield, and I mean, I feel a bit silly now because when Blues beat Huddersfield 4-1, I genuinely thought Huddersfield were the worst team I'd seen, and now Blues are somehow below them in the table. So that's another game where it's winnable. Blues know it's winnable because Blues have done it before. So there's 4 games there, especially the 2 away games, that are massively winnable fixtures. And I do think Blues will need 7 points to stay up, 6, maybe 7. And I think they can get those points. They've got to be a damn sight better than they were against Cardiff, and they've been, damn sight better than they've been for the last, 10 games. But I still think it's possible.
Yeah, where there is life, there is hope. And as Tom Wagner said, the destiny's not written yet. So, let's do what we all must do. Thank you, Alex, and it's a keep right on, isn't it? More so than ever.